All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to tackle what might be one of the toughest books in all of philosophy, Martin Heidegger's Being in Time. But here's the plan. We're not going to treat it like a textbook. We're going to treat it like a detective story. Because that's really what it is. It's about cracking a case that's gone cold for like 2,000 years. And it all revolves around a single question, one we all think is super obvious, but it turns out we've completely forgotten how to even ask it.
You know, Heidegger is so smart about this. He doesn't even start with his own words. He kicks the whole thing off with this quote from Plato. It's the very first thing you read, and it's a brilliant move. It tells you right away, hey, this isn't some new weird problem I just invented. This is an ancient puzzle. Even Plato, 2,400 years ago, basically admitted that this simple, everyday word, being, gets really, really confusing the second you try to pin it down. We all use it, we all think we get it, and then, just like he says, we become perplexed.
So yeah, let's just put the question right out there on the table. What does it actually mean for something to be? I mean, a chair is, the sky is blue. You are listening to this right now. But what is that isness? What is being itself? It feels like it should be the simplest thing in the world, but the moment you try to grab it, it's like smoke. It just slips right through your fingers.
So here's our game plan, our roadmap for this investigation. First, we'll look at why this question got forgotten in the first place. Then, we'll track down Heidegger's #1 lead, which is a bit of a surprise. After that, we'll investigate the scene of the crime, which is, well, our world. Then, we'll analyze the key evidence that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. And finally, we'll put it all together and see why cracking this case actually matters.
Okay, part 1, the forgotten question. Let's really set the stage for the mystery we're trying to solve.
This right here is Heidegger's main accusation. He's basically pointing at the entire history of Western philosophy and saying they all got sidetracked. They got obsessed with asking about all the different kinds of things that exist. You know, is there a God? Are numbers real? What is matter? What is consciousness? But they completely skipped over the most fundamental question. What does it mean for any of those things to exist in the first place? They forgot the question of being itself.
So why did everyone just stop asking? Well, Heidegger says it's because these 3 prejudices kind of took over philosophy. The first one was this idea that being is just too big, too universal. You can't really say anything specific about it. The second excuse, you can't define being without using the word is, so it's a circular argument. Why even try? And the third one, which is maybe the biggest cop-out of all, is that it's just obvious. Everyone knows what it means to be, right? But Heidegger's not buying it. He says these are just really good excuses to duck the single hardest question there is.
Which leads us to part 2. The clue is you, Dasein. Okay, we've got our cold case. Where in the world do we start looking for a lead?
Right. If we want to understand this thing called being, where do we even begin? I mean, you can't exactly put being itself under a microscope. So we need to find an entity, something that exists, that has a special hook into this whole question.
And that special entity, Heidegger says, is us. You and me. He gives us this unique name, Dasein. It's a German word that literally just means being there. And here's why we're so special. Think about it. A rock exists, but it doesn't care that it exists. It doesn't worry about its future. A tree, it is, but it doesn't lie awake at night pondering the meaning of its own existence. We are the one and only being in the universe for whom our own existence is an issue. It's a question. Our being actually matters to us. So, to be clear, Dasein, us, we're not the suspect in this crime. We're the star witness. We hold the key to the entire mystery because we're the only ones who already have a kind of built-in pre-understanding of what it means to be, even if it's all vague and fuzzy. The clue is us.
So, if we're the key witness, where do we begin our interrogation? Well, you go to the scene of the crime. Section 3, we are always already in a world. For hundreds of years, philosophy was stuck on this idea from René Descartes. You know, I think, therefore I am. He started from the idea of this pure, isolated mind, this little thinking thing that then had to somehow prove that an outside world even existed. Heidegger just says, nope, that's completely backwards. We don't start out as these isolated little brains in a jar. Our most fundamental way of existing is being in the world. We are always already out there, involved, engaged. We're part of a world that we never have to prove exists. And when he says being in, he doesn't just mean we're located in the world like water is in a glass. It's a much richer idea. It's more like being in on a secret,
or being in love. It's this deep state of involvement and familiarity. We don't just occupy space in the world. We inhabit it. We dwell here.
Okay, so we're not these detached minds. We're beings who are always already in a world. So what does that world actually look like when we get up close? This is section 4, Life Among Tools, and it's where we finally get to analyze the evidence. And it turns out, the evidence has been right in front of our faces the whole time.
Heidegger's big insight here is that we don't first encounter the world like a scientist looking at an object through a microscope. That's not our primary mode. Our first, most basic way of interacting with everything is practical. We use stuff. We grab a door handle, we type on a keyboard, we drive a car. Our deep understanding of things comes from doing.
And this brings us to Heidegger's famous hammer example, which honestly explains this perfectly. Think about it for a second. When you're just hammering a nail, are you thinking about the hammer, about its weight, its density, the kind of wood it's made from? No way. You're thinking about the nail, the wall, the job. The hammer almost vanishes into the activity itself. This is what Heidegger calls being ready to hand. It's part of the flow. But what happens if the head of the hammer breaks off? Everything stops. Suddenly you're not hammering anymore. You're just staring at this useless thing in your hand. Now you notice its properties. It's broken. It's a piece of wood, a chunk of metal. It's just an object. This he calls present at hand.
And here's the aha moment. That breakdown, that moment the hammer breaks, reveals the true nature of our everyday world. We don't actually live in a world that's a collection of random objects with properties. We live inside a massive web of useful equipment, a network of tools, where every single thing points to something else, all in relation to our goals and projects. The hammer points to the nail to the board to the bookshelf to my goal of organizing my room. That is the world we actually live in. So that brings us to the big finale, Section 5. Why does any of this matter? Let's review the case so far.
Well, if our most basic, fundamental way of encountering the world is through using things when they're ready to hand, then starting our search for the meaning of being with science or abstract logic is a huge mistake. Why? Because science and logic can only ever see things as being present at hand. They treat everything like that broken hammer. And that's a perfectly fine way of looking at the world, but it's not the original one. It's a secondary view built on top of our real, practical lives. It can't get to the heart of the mystery.
And here it is. This is the big revolutionary conclusion from Heidegger's initial investigation. If you want to answer the biggest, oldest, most abstract question in all of philosophy, the question of being, you can't start by looking up at the heavens or deep inside an atom. You have to start by looking at the most boring, ordinary, everyday parts of your own life. The clues are hidden in the way you pick up your keys, open a door, or, yes, use a hammer. So I'll leave you with one last question. This one isn't from Heidegger, it's for you. If the solution to philosophy's oldest cold case really is buried in the fabric of your normal, average day, in all the things you do without even thinking, what have you overlooked today?